He thought he was raising a dynasty. He was actually feeding a tragedy. In this story, the older brother is not just a mafia king. He is the architect of a world built on silence, violence, and inherited damage. And the woman at the center of it, she arrives for revenge but becomes the mirror that exposes every crack in the family. This is not just about cheating or desire. This is about how power turns love into possession, and how one forbidden choice can break an empire from the inside.
Trust me, he has no idea what's coming for him after the stunt he just pulled. My fiancé wasn't just unfaithful, he was with 2 other women. But there was no drama, no crying, no broken stuff. I aimed straight for his brother, Rela Montalvo, the oldest, the family's top dog. He's the type of guy you don't look at for more than a second unless you have a death wish or are just plain reckless. I was both. The plan was brutally effective. One night with him, one single hit that Ettore would never see coming. A perfect, clean revenge plot. But Rella didn't hold me like it was just a game. He held me like he'd been waiting his whole life. And when it was over, his words made it clear I wasn't just taking down one guy. I was getting involved with the most dangerous man in Palermo. And the worst part, I wanted to do it all over again. My name's Lena, and this is where my story kicks off. Chapter 1. What I saw. The apartment door was slightly open, a massive red flag that should have screamed danger. Ettore was a freak about locking things, but that night the door was unlatched, like the universe was begging me to walk in and see the truth. So I did. I heard the noise first, then saw the soft light from the bedroom, and then the whole scene hit me at once like a silent punch to the gut. He was in bed with 2 women, not 1 but 2, and none of them even saw me standing in the doorway holding his keys in my hand. The same keys he gave me when he swore I was the only one for him. I just stood there for 3 seconds that felt like an eternity as my brain struggled to catch up with what my eyes already knew. The sound of one of them laughing, a strange perfume on the sheets that I had helped pick out, and Ettore with that pretty face that convinced me to leave my entire life behind in Naples for a city that never felt like home. I didn't yell. I didn't do anything he could use against me to call me crazy or dramatic. I just backed away, went to the front door, turned the knob without making a sound, and slipped out of that apartment just as quietly as I had come in. If being an orphan taught me anything, it's that the most damaging pain is the kind you save up and unleash with perfect aim. I went down the stairs to my car, parked a few streets away on a narrow Palermo road under a single amber streetlight. I got into the driver's seat and put my hands on the wheel, but I didn't turn on the car. I just stared ahead as my chest got tighter and my eyes started to sting. I knew if I cried right then, I wouldn't be able to stop. So I fought it. I turned the key and started driving. Palermo at night has a beauty that seems totally fake. The old buildings, the lit-up churches against the black sky, the smell of the sea mixing with the hot pavement. I had actually started to like this city over the last 2 years since I moved here for Ettore. But that night, every single street felt like a ghost of a life that was gone forever. Moving to Palermo was his grand plan. Ettore Montecalvo, the flawless fiancé, handsome, charming, from one of Sicily's most powerful families. And I was Ortensia Ferrante, a jewelry maker from Naples who grew up in a tiny apartment raising her little sister, with zero interest in the Mafia, big mansions, or men whose last names were more powerful than any law. My parents were killed in a car wreck when I was 19. All of a sudden, it was just me and Fametta, who was 12, and thought the world was fair. I never got to believe that, but I raised her like it was true. I worked 3 jobs at once, making jewelry because it was the only skill I had that paid. And when Ettore came along, so charming and relentless with a smile that promised a better life. I decided to believe him. I left Naples, leaving Fametta with an aunt who barely tolerated her, and came to Palermo to build a future with a man I'd just found in our bed with two total strangers. I stopped the car at a scenic overlook above the city the kind tourists flock to during the day for pictures of the harbor. At night, the place was completely deserted, and the view below was just a sea of lights that meant nothing to me in that moment. I pulled out my phone and called the one person on the planet I knew would pick up no matter the time. Fametta answered on the fourth ring, her voice groggy with sleep. "Ort, it's 2 in the morning. Is somebody dead?" "Ettore cheated on me," I said, and the words came out flat like I was giving information. A piece of data. There was a 5-second silence on the other end. "Wait," she said, and I could hear her sit up. "With who?" "2 women." Another pause. This one was shorter. "He was with 2 of them." Her voice cracked, not with anger, but with the kind of disbelief that only Fametta could twist into a dark joke. "He can't even have an affair right. With 1, he'd be a classic scumbag. With 2, he's just pathetic." I almost smiled, because that's Fametta for you. She'd throw out a line like that in the middle of a meltdown, and for a second, the whole problem would just shrink. It wasn't because it was funny, but because it reminded me I had someone in my corner. "Ort," she said then, her voice low, the humor completely gone. "You need to get out of there. Go back to Naples, take the first train tomorrow and come home." "I'm not leaving," I said back, my eyes fixed on the port lights way down below. "Why not?" I didn't give her an answer, not because I didn't have one, but because the answer was still forming and it needed the quiet to become solid. Fametta got it. She always did. She said goodnight, her voice full of things she wasn't saying, and then she hung up. I just sat there, phone on my lap, as the Palermo wind blew into the car, carrying the smell of the sea and something else I didn't recognize yet. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't rage. It was something colder, more tactical, more like the real me than I ever wanted to admit. Ettore Montecalvo broke me that night, and I was going to make him pay in a way he would never anticipate. Chapter 2. The Brother. 2 days went by, and I said absolutely nothing. Ettore called the next morning, acting like everything was normal. He asked about lunch, griped about a meeting with the family's money guy, and ended with an "I love you," all in one go, as if saying he loved me was just another item on his schedule. I said yes, I was okay, and that I loved him too. I hung up the phone with my stomach twisting, but my hands perfectly still. This wasn't about faking it, this was strategy. Because the revenge brewing inside me wasn't the kind that involved yelling and breaking things. It was the kind that needed silence, timing, and a target that would hurt him way more than my words ever could. I'd already picked out the target. I just hadn't figured out how to get to it yet. On the evening of the second day, the opportunity I didn't know I was waiting for showed up. Dinner at the Villa Montecalvo, a family tradition. Every month, the matriarch gathered her sons, the organization's key players, and anyone else who needed a reminder of where they stood. As Ettore's fiancé, my attendance wasn't a choice. It was mandatory. I put on a high-necked black dress, pinned up my hair, and went with a dark lipstick. I looked at myself in the mirror, and it hit me that, for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't dressing to be looked at. I was dressing for a fight. The Villa Montecalvo was perched on the edge of Palermo, on a hill, with a view of the sea on one side and the city on the other. The property was ancient, with huge stone walls, hidden gardens, and an iron gate that creaked open like a warning that the rules inside were different. Ettor's car drove up the gravel path and stopped at the front, where 2 guards opened our doors in silence. I stepped out beside him, and he put his hand on my waist with the casual entitlement of a guy who thinks an engagement ring makes him your owner. The dining room was massive, with a dark wooden table big enough for 15 people, and an iron chandelier casting shadows on the walls. Most of the seats were already taken when we walked in. In the background, staff poured wine into glasses etched with the family seal. At the head of the table sat Donna Lucaya Montecalvo, the matriarch, 58, with her silver hair in a tight bun, gold chains on her neck, and a posture that screamed power. She was the mother of Ettore and Rella, and she ran the family's internal affairs with a grip so tight her sons wouldn't dare test it. When I entered, she gave me a nod without smiling, the most polite she'd ever been to me. To Donna Lucaya, I'd always be the girl from Naples, an outsider with no name and no right to be at her table. So check this out. Our girl Hortensia slides in next to Ettore, who's already deep in talks about a port shipment with some captain. Across the table sits Saro Ferrante, the family's consigliere, same name, no relation, his tired eyes scanning the scene. Saro's 60 and bald, dishing out a cold but polite vibe to literally everyone, friend or foe. Propped up against the wall near him is Bastiano, Rella's #1 guy, a total unit. He's in his early 30s, built like a truck, and so quiet you can't tell if he's bored or just a predator waiting to pounce. Bastiano's been Rella's shadow since they were kids. Their loyalty needs no paperwork. Right before they serve dessert, Ettore takes a call at the table. Donna Lucrezia's lips get paper thin, a total silent shutdown, but he completely ignores her. His call is less than a minute, but I'm close enough to catch 2 words that are bad news at dinner: transfer and postponed. After he hangs up, Saro peers over his glasses, his voice as flat as if he were talking about the rain. A problem with the port, figures Ettore. Ettore flashes one of his practiced smiles, the kind that flips anxiety into charm. Nothing a good accountant can't fix, Saro shoots back. The guy just goes back to sipping his wine, but I clocked his knuckles turning white on the stem for a split second. And Bastiano, who looked like he wasn't paying attention at all, drops his arms, giving Rella a look I wouldn't understand until way later. It's the look of a dude who knows the whole dirty secret and is just waiting for the signal to blow it all up. Then at the head of the table, my eyes land on him, Rella Montecalvo. I'd seen Rella at other dinners, quick stops at the villa to get Ettore, but I'd never actually seen him, never saw the weight on his shoulders, spine like a steel rod, his hands on the table like he was holding the whole world still. Rella's been running the Montecalvo family since his dad, Don Salvatore, checked out 6 years ago. He grabbed the reins at 26, ruling with few words and a zero-tolerance policy for screw-ups. He wasn't handsome like Ettore. Ettore had a movie star face, sharp jaw, light eyes, a killer smile. Rella's face earned him respect in rooms full of armed men. Hard lines, a locked jaw, and dark eyes that sucked in every detail. But this night was different. This night, his gaze locked onto mine. It went down over dessert while Donna Lucrezia was going on about renovating the East Wing and the captains were bitching about the cost. Ettore laughed at some joke, And as I'm just swirling my untouched wine, I feel this heavy-duty stare pressing on me. My eyes lift and connect with Rella's across the table. His focus was so raw, it literally snatched my breath. The stare held for 2, maybe 3 seconds too long. Then he glanced away, acting like nothing happened. But it did happen, and a chilling thought washed over me. That look wasn't new. Rella Montecalvo had been watching me like this before. At other dinners, in other hallways, moments I was too busy playing Torre's fiancé to notice his brother's eyes on me from the shadows. At dinner, Donna Lucrezia turns to me, her voice casual but dripping with judgment. "Hortensia, dear, how is your little jewelry work going?" Ettore chimes in. "You've been making some lovely pieces. It's so nice to have a hobby." That word, hobby, hit me like a slap. 2 years of my life, a Palermo gallery show, and 3 international contracts. And to her, it's a hobby. I was about to say something, but Ettore cuts in. "Mother, Hortensia is talented. Her pieces are selling well." He said it with the same empty energy he'd used to talk about the weather. No real pride, just filling air. I just smiled and said thanks, swallowing my comeback with a gulp of wine. After the meal, the guys retreated to the study, the women to the sitting room. I wanted to join neither, so I slipped into the hall, connecting the dining room to the garden. The corridor was wide, lined with stone and portraits of ancestors in gaudy gold frames. The air was cold, and the silence was a physical thing, thick and heavy. And that's where I ran into Rela. He was coming out of the study, totally alone. No Bastiano, no Saro, none of his usual crew. He saw me and just stopped. He didn't move aside or walk past or even give a polite nod. He just stopped, locked his eyes on me, and stood there. The hall was big enough for 2, but we were both in the center. And all of a sudden, the space between us felt way too small. "You are not in the sitting room with the others," he stated. His voice was deeper, lower than I'd ever imagined. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, the kind of opener a guy who's used to being in charge uses instead of small talk. "I am not like the others," I shot back, the words just flying out. The comeback was out before I could stop it, and for a second I thought I'd gone too far. But Rella didn't even flinch. A corner of his mouth lifted maybe half a centimeter. It was a micro smile, so small you'd miss it if you blinked. And in that tiny curve, I saw something you'd never expect from a guy like him. Surprise. Like he expected a bow, and I gave him a battle. "Interesting," was all he said. He moved past me, but his scent lingered for about 5 seconds after he was gone. It was woody and strong, not trying to be pleasant. It was a scent that just existed, because the man just existed, not something he picked off a shelf. I stood there, heart hammering, as an idea clicked into place in my mind, as perfectly as a necklace clasp. Rella Montecalvo, Ettore's older brother, the Don, a man everyone feared and no one crossed, had just smiled at me for less than a second in an empty hall with 0 witnesses. I was silent on the drive back. He opened my door, kissed my forehead, and said, "Dinner was nice." I agreed, my eyes glued to the rearview mirror as the Villa Montecalvo faded into the darkness. Rella Montecalvo was the perfect revenge, the one hit Ettore would never see coming. The scary part wasn't the plan itself, but how easily it came to me, as if the idea was just sleeping inside me, waiting for a trigger. Chapter 3, Fighting Fire with Fire. 1 week after that dinner, I knew Rella Montecalvo's schedule better than I knew my own. It wasn't hard. Ettore wouldn't shut up about his brother. He moaned about his hours, his meetings, the moves Rella made without asking him. "He's dining at Ferraro's again," Ettore would whine, as if the place was beneath the dawn. He spends more time there than at the villa. I collected every little detail like a raw diamond, waiting for the right time to cut it into a weapon. Ristorante Ferraro was on a tight street near Palermo's old quarter, the kind that hates cars but always has a black sedan with tinted windows parked there. From the outside, the place was a total sleeper. A wooden door, a tiny engraved sign, no neon, no line, inside dark tables, dim lights, and a quiet that meant the conversations were worth more than the food. I went on a Tuesday night solo telling Ettore I was meeting a gallery contact. He didn't even bother asking for a name. I grabbed a seat at the bar, ordered a red wine, and watched the entrance, pretending I had all the time in the world. Rella showed up at 9:15. I saw him first. The door opened and he walked in, with Bastiano 2 steps behind him. Just like always, their presence totally changed the room's energy. The manager stood up straighter. A waiter appeared out of nowhere with a menu, and 2 guys near the door fixed their posture without even thinking about it. Rella was in a dark suit, no tie, collar open. He moved with the confidence of a guy who knew nobody in that room would stand up unless he said so. His eyes met mine at the bar, and instead of heading to his reserved table, he mumbled something to Bastiano. Bastiano glanced from me to Rella, then walked toward the table without a word. Rella came to the bar, taking the stool next to me. He left a little space between us. Too close to be an accident, too far to be a move. "You again," he said without even looking at me. He signaled the bartender, who slid him a whiskey without being told. The guy was already dialed in. "Me again," I replied, swirling the wine in my glass. "Alone. It appears so." He took a sip of whiskey, his eyes fixed on the bottles behind the bar like he was reading some invisible code. Then his head turned, and he hit me with a look that didn't belong in a casual bar. It was direct, relentless, like he was digging for a secret I had buried deep down. "My brother's fiancé," he said, "rarely shows up at places she didn't pick herself." It wasn't an accusation, and it wasn't small talk. It was a test. "Perhaps the list has changed," I fired back, holding his gaze. A tiny flicker at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, told me my shot had landed. He threw back the rest of his whiskey, put the glass down on the bar, and got up. "Good night, Hortensia." He said my name like every syllable was a heavy stone. He walked over to his table in the shadows where Bastiano was waiting, arms crossed, with an expression I would only get much, much later. It was the look of a man who saw something he shouldn't have and decided to keep his mouth shut. As Rella sat down, Bastiano uncrossed his arms, his eyes flicking to the bar, to me, then back to Rella. Without looking up from the menu, Rella spoke. "Sit down, Bastiano." For 2 seconds, Bastiano just stood there, like he was deciding what to say. Before answering, "I think I'll stand. The vantage point is better." Rella didn't reply, but I saw it from across the room, that flicker on his lips again, this time almost turning into a real smile. So get this, 4 days later, round 2 kicks off, and this time she's not the one who planned it. She's at this little gallery show in Palermo, super proud of the 3 pieces she made herself. The door dings, and in walks Rel Montecalvo, cool as you like he owns the entire block. No guards, no crew, just him. He's rocking a dark shirt, sleeves rolled up, and suddenly the air in the room gets heavy, just like the first time they met. The whole vibe gets thick, and she tries to play it cool, saying, "Didn't expect to see you here," while her heart is doing a drum solo. He stops by her display. "Found the invite at home," he says. "Edie left it. Figured the exhibit was worth checking out." Note the shade there. He came for the art, not for her, and she totally caught that power move. But then he starts really looking at her work with actual legit focus. He zeroes in on a silver bracelet with red coral, one of her favorites. Then he drops this bomb. The coral isn't just for show, it's built into the design. She's totally floored. Nobody, not even the so-called art experts, ever got that. But here's this mob boss, this dude who runs the whole city, spitting facts about her own art back at her. All she can manage is, "You know your jewelry." "I know things made with a purpose," he shoots back. And now they're both leaning over the case, super close. He reaches for the bracelet and his fingers brush against hers. For maybe 3 seconds, time just stops. Neither of them moves. That electric touch hangs in the air until he finally picks up the piece, gives it a look, then sets it down, completely ignoring what just happened between them. "Good work, Hortensia," is all he says before turning and walking out. No wave, no nothing. She's left there buzzing from his touch, thinking her big revenge scheme is getting seriously complicated. The third encounter is the game changer. It goes down late at night in the villa's garden after another tense family dinner. She was dodging Donna Lucrezia's drama and ducked into the garden for some air. The garden's this walled-off spot full of orange trees and a stone bench. And guess who's already there? Rel, sitting on the bench, lost in thought. He doesn't even jump when she walks in. He just turns his head like he was expecting her. "Ditching the party?" she asks, walking up slowly. "Ditching my mother," he corrects her, which is the same thing in this house. A real laugh escapes her. She sits next to him, way closer than before, and this time it's totally on purpose. For a minute, they just sit there in the quiet. Then he asks, "Do you like it here? Palermo, this life?" The question sounds simple, but it's loaded. "Parts of it," she admits. "But I feel small here. In Naples, I was somebody. Here, I'm just the new girl." He gets quiet, like her words hit a nerve. Then he drops some serious backstory. "I took over the family at 26, he says. My dad died, and the next day I'm staring down 30 guys waiting for orders. Nobody asked if I was ready. They just sat there waiting. And in that moment, she sees the guy behind the scary reputation. Not the boss, but the man carrying a world he never asked for, all alone. Do you miss any of it? She asks. Before all this? He takes a long pause, then whispers, I don't remember who I was before. That hits her hard because honestly, she gets it completely. She can't remember who she was either before losing her parents and raising Fiamma. In that moment, the game between them just melts away. This isn't about payback anymore. It's real and it's raw. He turns to her, and now there's no space between them at all. She can feel his body heat, his scent, and hear him breathing like he's fighting to stay in control. He starts leaning in. It's a slow, deliberate move from a guy who knows he's about to cross a line. You're playing a dangerous game, Hortensia, he murmurs, his breath on her skin. Perhaps, she whispers back, not breaking eye contact. But I'm not the one losing control. Oh, the challenge is on. His eyes dart to her mouth and back up. You can see the war inside him. But then Rel pulls back. He knows that crossing that line with his family 30 meters away would torch everything. He gets up, adjusts his collar, and just says a quiet, "Good night." Then he's gone. She's left on the bench, her heart pounding, desperately trying to believe this is still her revenge plan and that she's still in charge. The next morning, she calls her friend, Fameda, giving her the short version. "Let me get this straight," Fameda says. "You've moved on from the cheating brother to the mob boss brother." "Hortensia, that isn't a plan," she deadpans. "That's a prestige drama series." For the first time in forever, Hortensia actually laughs, and the sound of it scares her. Later, she tries to work, sketching a silver ring. But the lines on the paper won't cooperate. She keeps erasing and redrawing until she realizes she's not sketching a ring. She's drawing the sharp line of his jaw, the profile of a face she has no business remembering so clearly. My pencil literally dropped. I'm just staring at this paper. My heart is absolutely hammering, and for what? This was never the plan. The mission was simple. Get close to Rel, make sure Etre finds out, and let the guy suffer. I wasn't supposed to actually enjoy the con. He wasn't supposed to be living rent-free in my head 24/7. I definitely wasn't supposed to be replaying him saying, "I know about things made with intention," like he was talking about me, not my art. And I sure as hell wasn't supposed to feel his hand on mine every time I looked at that stupid coral. And yet here we are. He's all I think about. I replay it all. I feel everything. So he calls me that night, going on about some business trip for 2 days, a supplier meeting in Katana back by the weekend. His voice is the same as always. Breezy, clueless, the sound of a guy who has no idea his world is about to implode. I'm waiting for the rage to hit, that old familiar sting of hurt, that fire for payback that's been my entire life's mission. I'm literally waiting for it. But instead, this cold dread washes over me, something way worse than anger, total indifference. Etre Montecalvo is talking, and I feel nothing. No rage, no pain, no need to make him pay. He'd become just background noise, like a TV left on in an empty room. And if he was just static, then so was my epic revenge plot. Vengeance needs fuel, and my fire was gone, replaced by whatever this thing was in that stupid sketch. It was in the phantom heat on my skin, in that quiet garden where a man carrying the world on his shoulders admitted he was lost. I balled up the drawing of Rel's jaw, chucked it, and kept repeating the lie. It's still revenge. I'm in control. The plan is on track. A total lie I was too scared to face. Meanwhile, across town, Etre was finally starting to clue in that something was seriously wrong. A text that was too damn short. A look in my eyes he couldn't figure out. The way I'd clutch my phone whenever he walked in. He hadn't put the pieces together yet, but the dude was watching me, and I knew my time was running out. Chapter 4: The Night. It all went sideways. 2 weeks after we first met, I made the call I could never take back. This wasn't some snap decision. For 14 straight days, it was a war inside my head. My brain versus my feelings. My logical side was screaming, "Rollo Montecalvo is a weapon, not the prize." But my heart was whispering a totally different story, and that whisper was wrecking my sleep, making me think about his touch at the gallery when I should have been plotting destruction. It had me remembering his scent in the garden while I was lying in bed. I tried to gaslight myself, calling it adrenaline, the thrill of the game, getting close to the danger, the kick of it all working. I promised myself once the revenge was done, all this would just fade away. but on the night I started my car and drove to the Villa Monte Calvo without telling a soul, I knew I was done lying to myself. I rolled up to the estate around 11 at night. The main gates were locked, but a single light was glowing upstairs. Rel's study, his late-night spot. I parked down the street, got out, and walked straight up to the guard at the side gate. He knew who I was, the fiancé, and gave me that confused but respectful look the staff saves for anyone connected to the Monte Calvo name. I need to speak with Rel, I told him, dropping the first name on purpose. Not Mr. Monte Calvo, not the boss. The guard clocked the vibe immediately, but knew better than to say anything. He mumbled into his radio, got the all clear, and swung the gate open without a word. The villa hits different at night. The hallways, usually buzzing with people, were dead silent and dark, with just these single lights making creepy pools on the floor. With every single echo of my footsteps, I knew I was walking toward the point of no return. Rel's study was at the end of the hall on the second floor, behind a massive wooden door I'd never been through. When I got there, the door was cracked open, a sliver of light spilling out. I pushed it open and walked in. He was at his desk in a dark shirt, sleeves rolled up, with papers everywhere. The room was exactly what you'd expect for a guy like him. Dark wood, bookcases up to the ceiling, a worn-out leather chair, and that constant smell of wood and coffee. The window was open to the night, letting in a breeze that smelled like the sea and the orange groves outside. Rel looked up when I walked in, and the silence stretched for way too long. He just watched me with that look I knew so well, analyzing, processing, gathering intel before making his next move. I just stood there in a dark dress, my hair down, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Hortensia," he said. And hearing my name at 11 at night in his private office with the door clicking shut behind me sounded different. It sounded like a warning. "I needed to talk to you," I said, taking a step forward. The desk was a massive barrier between us, but it felt like nothing. "At this hour," he said, not a question but a flat statement. He came around the desk, moving slow, deliberate, more like a predator shifting its weight than a man walking. Every step he took just sucked the air out of the room, making it feel hotter as he got closer. When he finally stopped, he was less than a foot away, and I had to tilt my head up just to look him in the eye. This time, with no garden, no crowd, no faking a chance encounter, his presence had a whole new weight to it. It was stronger, way more dangerous. "You did not come here for me," he said, his voice low and steady, but with a deep rumble I'd never heard before. "You came because of him." That line hit me like a bucket of ice water. Not because it was a lie, but because it was the absolute, 100% truth I'd started this night with. I came for my revenge. I came to turn Rel into the weapon that would finally destroy Etra. And he knew. He knew the whole damn time. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, to keep up the act that I was in control. But Rel didn't give me the chance. "I don't care," he said, and then he kissed me. His mouth was on mine before I could even process the words. This wasn't a gentle kiss, it was precise, its power perfectly controlled, its pressure firm. Like he'd run this exact scenario in his head 1,000 times. His hands cupped my face with a strength that wasn't painful, just absolute. I could feel the heat from his palms, taste the whiskey on his lips, and smell that woodsy scent I knew from the halls. But this close, it was something else. It was a heat, a weight. That was completely him. That was my cue to pull back. I should have shoved him off, fixed my dress, and dropped some witty line about how this was a bad idea. But his kiss left zero room for thinking. My body just took over long before my brain could say no. Without even realizing it, my hands were on his shirt, feeling the fabric and the solid muscle underneath, while his fingers moved from my face to my throat, then to the hollow of my collarbone, with a purpose that completely stole my breath. What happened next was never, ever part of the plan. Nothing about that night was. Rella was a guy who met the world with a knife's edge. I knew that. He commanded men with one word, solved problems with a look, and faced enemies with a coldness deadlier than any bullet. But here, alone in his study, with the villa dead quiet, he was a different man. Every touch was measured, on point, like he'd been waiting for this forever and wasn't about to waste a single second. His hands moved over my body with a kind of worship I'd never gotten from a guy who was handsome, charming, and always said the right thing. But with him, touch was a chore, another item on his to-do list. Rella wasn't rushing. He held my eyes after every move, asking for permission without speaking, giving me every chance to bail while knowing I never would. His fingers eased the strap of my dress off my shoulder so slowly it was practically torture. As the silk slid down my skin, inch by agonizing inch, I saw his jaw clench. A tiny tell that showed just how much self-control this was costing him. At some point, my back hit the desk. Its cool wood, a crazy contrast to the heat of his body pressing against me. The feeling made me gasp, and he paused. Not because I asked, but to catalog the sound, to make sure it was a good one. His eyes, dark and crazy intense, locked with mine. And deep inside them, I saw something that freaked me out more than any touch. He wasn't just doing this to get laid. This was a flat-out necessity, a core need. I yanked at his shirt. The buttons gave way. The fabric opened up. And the second my hands touched his skin, warm, tight, and covered in scars from stories he'd never told, his breathing changed. It got shorter, deeper. The first crack in Rella Montecalvo's legendary composure. He lifted me by the waist, setting me on the edge of the desk so easily it left me breathless. He stood between my legs, hands gripping my hips, and pressed his forehead to mine. We stayed like that for a beat that felt like an eternity, sharing the same supercharged air, right on the edge of no return. As the last of the clothes disappeared, his look wasn't just lust, it was pure intention. The look of a man who was completely in charge and wanted me to know it. He entered me with a slow, deliberate push. The feeling made me arch my back and dig my nails into his shoulders. He held himself perfectly still for a second, his breath hitched, his eyes locked on mine. And in that moment, she saw it, a chink in his armor. The guy was giving everything he was taking. The rhythm he set was a straight-up power move, slow, deep, pulling back just to the brink before diving back in. He tracked her every reaction, his hands clamped on her hips like an anchor. The desk started creaking, a soundtrack to their ragged breathing, and her name, breathed so low against her neck she nearly missed it. The pressure built, and then it just blew. He slammed on the gas without losing an inch of depth, and her whole world just became him. She broke first. The wave hit hard, and she just clung to him as her body went into overdrive. Rella hit his limit a second later, his entire body going rigid in one last insane thrust. A raw grunt escaped him against her neck, one he didn't even try to hold back. For the first time all night, his perfect control was completely shattered. When it was done, the quiet that slammed down in the room was heavier than anything she'd ever heard. They stayed in that study for who knows how long. He was leaned up on the desk, shirt a mess, hair all over the place. She stood by the window, hands shaking as she fixed her dress, the air thick with the smell of the night, the ocean, and something way more personal. Rella was the one to break the silence. "This wasn't part of your plan," he said, not even looking at her. His voice was rougher than usual, with an edge she couldn't identify. It wasn't cold, it wasn't controlled. It was just brutally honest. And yeah, it wasn't in her plans either. She said nothing because what could she even say? He was dead right. She came to this villa to play the older brother against the younger one. What just happened in that study was way off script. The fire, the intensity, the way he fit against her like a missing piece. That wasn't about revenge. It was something that scared her way more than the betrayal that brought her here. She bolted from the villa before the sun came up. The huge iron gate groaned open, the sound echoing over the hill like a warning that came way too late. She got in her car, put her hands on the wheel, and just stared into the darkness, trying to compute what the hell just happened. She pulled out her phone and shot a text to Fia. "I have to talk to you." A reply came back in under 30 seconds, even though it was almost 3 in the morning. "If you're confessing to a murder, I'm on the first train to Palermo. If not, it can wait till daylight. I have an 8 o'clock exam." A tiny smile hit her lips. She dropped the phone, fired up the engine, and drove down the hill with Palermo lit up below like a map of everything she'd just screwed up forever. What she couldn't possibly know was that someone in the villa was already awake, and that in 3 days, Monte Calvo was about to find out everything. Chapter 5. Blood and Silence. 3 days. That was all it took for her entire world to detonate. For 3 days, she was living on a razor's edge. She woke up next to Etre, had coffee with him, and texted him back like normal, all while the truth of what she'd done was clawing at her chest. Her body remembered what her voice couldn't say. Her hands could still feel the fabric of Rella's shirt. Her skin remembered his heat, his weight, the scent of wood, and the ocean that stuck to her for hours after she ran from the villa. She didn't call Rella, he didn't call her, and the silence between them, which should have been a relief, was a heavy, churning dread in her gut she couldn't shake. On the 3rd day, Donna Lucrezia held a family lunch at the villa. It was a casual thing, with a table on the terrace overlooking the gardens, a crisp white tablecloth, and the Palermo sun beating down. She showed up like she always did, on E.T.'s arm, rocking the right dress, fake smile. Bastiano was already at his post by the back door, arms crossed. Sardo, the family's lawyer, was chilling in a chair, scrolling on his phone. Donna Lucrezia was directing the staff like a 4-star general. Rella hadn't shown up yet, and she hated herself for immediately scanning the area for him the second she arrived. The meal started without him. Hattori was in a great mood, laughing his head off and refilling his wine glass like a guy on a mission. Donna Lucrezia was giving sharp feedback on the food, the new renovations, and the crazy heat. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. Rella showed up just as they were serving the second course. He walked in from the garden, not the house, rocking his usual dark clothes and that classic expression of a man carrying the weight of the world. He grabbed the empty seat at the end of the table, gave his mom a quick nod, and then completely and deliberately ignored her. The entire vibe of the terrace shifted the second he sat down. Not because of anything he did, but because she was hyper aware of what was now between them, and faking it was draining her battery fast. That's when Etre shot to his feet. It wasn't slow. He didn't excuse himself. 1 second he was sitting, the next he was standing there, glass in hand, his eyes bloodshot with something she first thought was booze. But it wasn't wine, it was pure rage. "Would anyone care to tell me what the hell is going on?" he yelled, his eyes snapping from her to Rella. His voice was so sharp it cut right through the chatter like a blade. The whole terrace went dead silent. Donna Lucrezia froze, fork hanging in the air. Sardo lowered his phone. Bastiano uncrossed his arms. Every single head swiveled from Eder to her and then to Rella, like watching a slow-motion disaster. "Eder," Donna Lucrezia started, using her mom voice to try and put out the fire. "No, Mother." He cut her off, his eyes locked on our girl. "She knows exactly what I'm talking about, and so does he." She gripped her wine glass with both hands, not to drink, but to hold on to something. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were rock steady. She'd replayed this exact scene in her head for 3 days, the moment Etre found out, but no amount of practice could have prepped her for the feeling of every single Monte Calvo's eyes pointing at her like a firing squad. "You," he seethes, aiming his glass at her, wine sloshing dangerously. "You were with my brother." And boom! The accusation detonates in the quiet. Donna Lucizia's fork clatters to her plate. Sardo's eyebrow actually goes up, the first crack ever in his stone-cold poker face. The staff just ghosts, pros at disappearing when the drama starts. She meets Ito's stare, the same eyes that promised her everything, a life she built for a man who wasn't worth it. And she claps back. Her composure is shock to them both. "The moment I opened that door, you destroyed everything. Don't you dare blame me for finding my own way out." 2 seconds of pure silence. In that gap, his anger deflates into shock, then twists into nasty humiliation. Her words weren't a shield. They were a blade, putting his cheating on blast for the whole family. "You're a..." He starts to spit, but Rahl is already on his feet. No drama, no fight, just the harsh scrape of his chair on the stone, a sound that cuts Edo's words clean off. Rahl's presence alone makes yelling pointless. His posture, his rigid shoulders, that cold, unblinking stare. It turned the silence into a weapon. "Sit down," Rahl ordered his brother. The words were few but heavy with consequences. Eto stayed on his feet, but the insult died on his lips. He was frozen, glass shaking, face burning, glaring at Rahl with that special hate only brothers have. Donna Lucizia then rises, placing her napkin down with icy calm. "Rallello to the study now." It wasn't a request, it was the matriarch laying down the law. Rahl's eyes flick from her to me. For a split second, they lock, and I got the whole message. The worry, the contained rage, and a silent plea for her to hold it together. He went inside, following his mother. Eto stayed on the terrace, seething, his hand strangling his wine glass. Bastiano then smoothly shifts to block the space between them. A subtle barrier they both understood. She stood up from her chair and bailed through a side exit into the hall. She had to breathe. She needed to escape the judgmental stares and the whispers. Finding a cool wall, she leaned back, closed her eyes, and took one long, shaky breath. The sound of urgent footsteps, a hushed conversation from down the hall. Sardo and Bastiano near the stairs, their voices low. She stayed completely still, eyes shut, soaking in the sounds. "The last shipment's figures are short," Sardo said, his tone as casual for treason as it was for taxes. "Same problem we've seen for months. He's been skimming from at least 3 ventures I know of, probably more. A 2-second beat from Bastiano, then, softer. Does Raul know? Raul knows it all, Sardo replied. He's just picking his moment. Their footsteps faded. She stayed pressed to the wall, this new info clicking into a bigger, uglier picture she was just starting to see. So I'm plastered against a wall at Villa Monte Calvo, sun blasting through the arches, when I hear her. It's Donna Letizia, the matriarch, and her voice cuts right through the study door. You get rid of that woman, or I'm calling a family meeting, she snaps, and we both know how that vote goes. Raul says nothing, or he's too quiet to hear. Then, footsteps. The door opens and closes, dead air. I'm about to bounce when Donna Letizia steps out and bam, busted. Her eyes lock onto mine before I can even pretend I was just walking by. The look she gives me says it all. She knows I was eavesdropping, and get this, she doesn't even care. Maybe she wanted me to hear. She stops a few feet away, and this close I can see what's hidden at dinner. The fine lines around her eyes, the aging skin her fancy gold chain can't hide, the exhaustion from propping up a dynasty that never gave her props. You think you're the first? She asks, her voice heavy with history, not hate. I was her once. Salvatore brought me here when I was 23, and his mother gave me the same death stare I'm giving you right now. Eventually she died, and I took her place. That's how this house works. The women who stick it out get the fortress, but never the power. I stared right back, not blinking, and said, then maybe the house rules need to change. For 3 whole seconds, Donna Lucizia just stared, and in that tiny moment I saw a flicker of something on her face. Not agreement, but acknowledgement. Like she knew I wasn't just another pretty face to fill a spot. I was here to flip the whole board. She didn't reply, just fiddled with her necklace and walked on without looking back. But her stride wasn't as steady as before. I knew our little chat had gotten into her head. For the next 2 days, Raul straight up ghosted me. He was there. Yeah, in the villa, in meetings with Bastiano and Sardo, running the port. But for me, he was gone. No looks, no texts, not a single word. Our night in the study felt like a fever dream. I was right back to being a nobody in the Monte Calvo game. Ito was gone the next morning and stayed gone. He was hiding out in his city apartment, sending rage texts I ignored and calls I let ring out. He wasn't my problem anymore. Raul was. At least that's what I told myself, trying to make sense of the empty feeling growing with every silent hour. On the evening of day 2, I called Fametta. She picked up instantly, like she was expecting it. I started telling her about the terrace, about Donna Lucizia's ultimatum, but Fametta cut me off. No jokes, no advice, just pure terror. Stop, she begged. Aurora, stop, you're scaring me. I shut up. I'm serious, she said, and I could hear her get up and start pacing. You're surrounded by a Mafia clan while I'm in Naples studying for an art exam like nothing's wrong. What am I supposed to do? How can I help? I don't know how. Her voice broke on the last word, and that hurt worse than anything Ito or the Don's mom could say. Fametta was the one I always protected. Now she was trying to protect me, and we were both completely lost. You help by staying exactly where you are, I told her, trying to sound solid, and by believing in me. 5 seconds of silence. Then softer, she said, I do. But if they hurt you, I will come to Palermo and burn that villa to the ground, I swear. I almost smiled, but it hurt. Because for the first time, this wasn't just about surviving. I wanted him. The thought hit me like a ton of bricks because this wasn't about revenge or strategy anymore. This was real. The kind of want that one night can't fix, the kind you can't game plan. I wanted Raul Montalvo. I wanted the monster, the quiet pain, and all his broken pieces. And him choosing the family business over me was a pain that cut way deeper than any of Ito's lies. The next morning, a text from Bastiano popped up. Super short. Meeting, main hall, tonight. Then the line that changed everything. He requests your presence. I read it 3 times. Requests, not demands, not orders. He asked, Raul Montecalvo was asking, and that one word was a bigger deal than any kiss. I had 0 idea what he was planning. Was I about to get chosen or get kicked to the curb? Was he going to defend us or sacrifice me to his family? But I knew one thing for sure. He needed me to see it happen, no matter how it ended. And I wasn't about to flake. Chapter 6. What Remains. The main hall at Villa Montecalvo was basically built for showdowns like this: high ceilings, stone walls, and a table surrounded by chairs that looked like thrones. This is where the old Don built his empire, and where Raul took over. Tonight the lights were low, the shutters were down, and the air was thick enough to choke on. When I walked in, the whole crew was already there. Donna Lutizia sat near the head of the table, hands folded, looking like someone who feels a storm coming but doesn't know from which direction. Saro was next to her, looking bored as usual with a leather folder in front of him. Bastiano was at his post by the wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp, silent. On the left were 3 family captains I only knew by sight, while Ettore stood at the far end, looking smug and ready for a fight. I kinda hovered by the door, not sure if I was supposed to sit or stand. Nobody told me to leave, but nobody invited me in either. I was there because Raul asked, and that was it. He was the last one in. He shut the door with this chill vibe of a guy who knows the show doesn't start until he says so. He was wearing a dark shirt, no jacket, and his eyes swept the room until they landed on me. His gaze only held for a split second, but in that moment, I could finally breathe again. It wasn't fear in his eyes. It wasn't doubt. It was pure, cold steel. He didn't speak to me. He spoke to them all. This meeting isn't about territory, the port, or money, he started, his voice a low rumble that you only had to hear once. This is about the soul of our family and about the person who has been poisoning it. Ittore's arms unfolded, his chin lifted, and his eyes screamed total confidence that this was about to be my public execution. He thought Raul was about to dump me, that his mom had won, that Big Brother was finally choosing his bloodline. He was dead wrong. Over the last 18 months, Raul continued, his voice perfectly level, Ettore Montecarlo ran up debts in this family's name without anyone's okay. He used our port for side deals that went around this council. He skimmed cash from 3 separate operations before Saro ever saw a dime. And he dragged this family's name through the mud with his personal drama. The room went dead silent. It wasn't a sound. It was the total absence of it. The captains, who'd been like statues, suddenly sat bolt upright. Donna Lutizia's mouth dropped open, then shut. Saro opened his folder and slid a stack of papers to the captains, and judging by their faces, it proved everything Raul said and then some. Ettore went pale. That's a lie, he managed, but it came out like a squeak. This is a witch hunt. You're only doing this because of her. Raul didn't even blink. The evidence is on the table. The numbers are there. The dates are there. Your signatures are there. If you want to argue, argue with the facts, not with me. Sorrow gave a tiny nod, which from him was like a judge's gavel. The captain stared at the pages, and you could watch their expressions turn from neutral to completely disgusted. Donna Lucitia finally got to her feet. "Rawl," she started, her voice sounding brittle and weird. "He is your brother." Rawl looked his mother right in the eye. He wasn't being cruel, but he wasn't offering any comfort either. It was the face of a man whose decision was final. "You protect the son that you love," he said. "I protect the family I am sworn to lead. The two are not the same." The words hit Donna Lucitia like a punch she never saw coming. Her mouth opened, but she had no comeback. She just sank back into her chair, crushed into silence. And that quiet from a woman who was never quiet was the most damning proof of all. Ettere's head was on a swivel, desperately searching for a friendly face. Just one ally in the fortress Rel had built around him. He found Jack squat. The captains wouldn't even look at him. Sorrow was already packing up like the case was closed. Bastiano, who'd been a statue, shifted his weight, basically becoming a human roadblock between Etere and the door. He knew what was coming next. A runner. "You are exiled," Rel announced, the words slamming down like a gavel. "From Palermo, from this family, from any Monte Carlo business. From this second on, you're not my problem." Ettore shot up, his chair screaming against the stone, fists balled up, glaring at Rel with a hate that could burn for centuries. Then his eyes slowly slid over to me, slid over. I was posted up in the corner, back against the wall, trying to be invisible. But when Ettere's psycho stare locked onto mine, I didn't even flinch. I met it with the same dead calm I had on the terrace 3 days ago when he tried to throw me under the bus. "This is not finished," he seethed, his eyes glued to me. His voice was low, trying to sound controlled, but I felt a vibration that went straight to my bones. This wasn't just rage, this was a blood oath. The kind a guy like Ettore makes when he's got nothing left to lose and needs a reason to keep breathing. He walked out without another look at anyone. Bastiano moved aside, and the door clicked shut, the sound echoing off the stone. The room started to empty out. First, the captains bounced, all silent and carrying the weight of what just went down. Sorrow grabbed his stuff, gave Rel a quick nod, and strolled out like a man who had all the time in the world. Donna Lucitia was the last to go. She pushed herself up, gave her son an unreadable look, and then ghosted. Bastiano followed her out, closing the door again. Now, it was just us. Rel stood at the head of the table, hands planted on the wood, his shoulders sagging just a little, like the true cost of his win was finally hitting him. I peeled myself off the wall and started walking toward him, every step echoing in the dead, quiet room. "Did you do all of this for me?" I asked, stopping right across the table. He looked up, his eyes exhausted, but still rocking that trademark intensity, but now with something else, something raw, breakable, even human. "I did it because it had to be done," he said, "but I wouldn't have done it today if it wasn't for you." The brutal honesty of that line just wrecked my defenses in a way no kiss ever could. That was Rello Montecarvo in a nutshell, a guy who speaks the truth when it costs him everything, refusing to sugarcoat reality to make it an easier pill to swallow. I walked around the edge of the table. I stopped right in front of him, close enough to feel the body heat rolling off him, to smell that mix of old wood and coffee that basically was him. I reached up and touched his face, tracing his sharp jawline, the warmth of his skin, the slight scratch of stubble. He closed his eyes, and in that one move, Rello Montecarvo shutting his eyes to my touch, like for once someone was offering comfort without a catch. I knew this was the realest he'd ever been with anyone. More real than that night in his study, more real than any confession he could ever say out loud. His eyes stayed shut, a total surrender to my touch in that silent, ghost-filled room. Later, we hit up the garden, chilling on the same stone bench where things first got complicated between us. The night was perfect, and the lights of Palermo glittered below like spilled diamonds. The air smelled like orange blossoms in the ocean, and you could hear a ship's horn from the port. Rel was next to me, quiet, but it wasn't the tense silence from the last 2 days. This was that chill vibe between two people who finally quit fighting the feels and just let it happen. I rested my head on his shoulder, and he didn't even move. He didn't hug me or pull me in or say a word. He was just there, solid as the villa's old stones, like the deep roots of the orange trees, like something built to last. I closed my eyes and breathed in, feeling his shoulder against me and the warm Sicilian air. We were together. We had found a calm moment. The fights were done. Ettore was gone. The family knew the real story. And I'd found something real in a world where I only came for revenge. But as the wind shifted, bringing in a chill from the sea, Ettore's last words came back, not as a sound, but as a heavy weight. He spit out just 4 words, his eyes locked on mine before he left, with the calm of a guy who doesn't need to yell to be scary. This isn't over. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I kind of believed him. Lena here, and that's the end of book 1, but I already wrote the second. You can get it right now for a super small fee. Just 3 months of peace, that was all I asked for. Rel next to me. Ettore gone. The villa was finally quiet until a late-night call blew up the silence. On the other end, my sister's voice, the one person I love most in this world, sobbing like I'd never heard before. And before I could even say anything, a man's voice cut in, cold, detached, and way too familiar. You know what I want, Hortensia, and you understand what happens if I am denied. He didn't come back throwing a tantrum. He came back with a cold-blooded strategy, Russian backup, and my sister as a hostage. The price for getting her back was the one promise I swore I'd never break. To go back to him and betray Rel. As you've heard, that's just a taste of book 2. To get the full uncensored story, just click the first link in the pinned comment. I'll meet you over there in just a few seconds. Quick reminder, click that first link in the comments and the whole of book 2, ad-free, will be there for you. It's that easy. I am having a blast working on book 2. And since you're all loving it, I promise the ride only gets darker from here. This is where we get into stories with way more bite. Real dark romance. And because this version is getting so much more intense, the video would get slammed here on YouTube. This private spot is where I can really cut loose and make my best stuff for all of you. Remember, the channel got demonetized. So this is how I keep my team together and continue to drop high-quality stories for you. I've got even more news coming soon. I'll be waiting for you at that first link in the pinned comment. Sadly, a lot of people have been ripping our audio, basically stealing the whole story and just reposting it on YouTube.
From a distance, Hortensia's story looks like a romantic criminal drama, but beneath the seduction, betrayal, and family power struggle, it is really a study of inherited violence. Ettore wounds her with infidelity, but the deeper wound is not sexual betrayal, it is dehumanization. He treats love like property, attention like currency, and loyalty like something owed to him. When Hortensia chooses his brother as revenge, she does not escape that system, she mirrors it. She turns intimacy into strategy because she has just been treated as strategy herself. That is the cruel architecture of damaged worlds. They teach injured people to survive by becoming fluent in the very language that hurt them. The Monte Calvo family is not only a mafia household, it is a machine that converts human vulnerability into hierarchy. Men perform power, women inherit walls, emotion is tolerated only when it can be weaponized. In that environment, tenderness becomes rebellion. Rel embodies the paradox of patriarchal power. He appears invincible, yet he is also trapped by duty, inheritance, and the expectation that control is masculinity. He believes he is carrying the family. In reality, the family is carrying him into emotional ruin. Hortensia recognizes that before he does. Her presence confronts him with the terrifying possibility that strength without selfhood is only a polished cage. The life lesson here is not merely that betrayal hurts, it is that wounded people often reenact the structure of their wound unless they consciously interrupt it. Hortensia's transformation begins the moment revenge stops feeling satisfying. That discomfort is moral awakening. It is the moment she understands that pain can explain a choice, but it cannot justify every choice. The story's most powerful idea is this: people do not become free when they win the war. They become free when they refuse to inherit its logic. Hortensia is strongest not when she manipulates, not when she provokes, not even when she is desired. She is strongest when she begins to tell herself the truth. And truth, unlike vengeance, does not ask for applause, it asks for courage.